Good afternoon. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, a host, Imperial Dane, here to talk about some of the recent bits that I sort of mentioned I would in the propaganda news segment. That is, talk about some of the balanced stuff that has been relics brought up, to sort of give my perspective on it. In this case, I'm going to look at the one of the ones sort of more confusing, a little bit about, Soviet and Wehrmacht commanders, not being, on the same level as the others, and apparently being a big balance issue, at least for some. Of course, there's always the theory that's just some players where, saying something's wrong, but, at the same time, not admitting to the fact that, Axe is not OP and Relic's a bunch of Nazis. So, I mean, looking at commanders for the Soviet and Wehrmacht, that's sort of one thing that so quickly becomes apparent if you sort of look at them, sort of a bit cautiously, and note a few things, and that is a lot of them are bloody similar. I mean, there's a lot of sort of serious overlap. I mean, take for example here, conscript support tactics. Then take a look at, I don't know, how about Soviet Reserve Army? They got a lot of similarities. Conscript repair kits, submachine guns, rapid conscription. And what's this? Oh, rapid conscription. Not rapid conscription, but, hit the dirt, submachine guns, artillery, also some of that puzzle there. I mean, there's a lot of, large degrees of similarity between a lot of the doctrines, Soviet and Wehrmacht. I mean, the Wehrmacht, we've got, I don't know. I mean, we got, for some doctrines here with a lot of tigers. We got like 3 doctrines with tigers, though they are a bit more dissimilar than others. Then we got fortified armor and Jaeger armor, and they're actually a lot more similar. Hold down, elephants, other bits there. There's a lot of command tanks overlapping. That's the point, they're a lot more overlapping. But also, I think there's another issue there in the sense that is in terms of just power level and what a lot of things can do. They're not quite on the same level as the Allies, except for some of the later ones, like, for example, Encirclement, which had abilities like breakthrough, break supply line, close the pocket. Stormtrooper, you sort of compare with a lot of the, newer ones, which again is sort of what, we started with. I mean, in terms of power level, what they could do, they're, not quite as, impressive. I mean, take the Americans. Again, we got, the ever-popular heavy cavalry. That's got combined arms, Pershings, Rangers, smoke, rifleman field defenses. And that's sort of the thing. I mean, look at rifleman field defense. They can build fighting positions, sandbags, lay down mines. Take a look, say, the Wehrmacht, no, I don't know. Defensive, if you can look at that one there. And again, just tank traps and trenches, something like for some mobile commands would have, bunched together with flat emplacements. They have to, use 2 abilities for. That's sort of probably where things sort of get a bit awkward again, where sort of, when you sort of compare the different doctrines for the different armies, it kind of looks like the Soviets and the Wehrmacht. You get rather the drastically short end of the stick. I mean, there's no mortar cover for them, no air supremacy operations really. No smoke raid operations, air resupply, artillery cover, vehicle crew repairs like that one. Again, the British get a mass one, really, with other bits to it. And again, the Americans, we get, for them, combined arms. Again, I'm still surprised they didn't give Wehrmacht that one. That really seems like a shoo-in for the Wehrmacht, known for that, or the Oberkommando West. But, you also got stuff like, rifleman flares, white phosphorus barrages, EC8s. Again, in that sense, there's also just more neater stuff there for them. But really, just when you look at it, so in terms of just what's added there, it sort of, seems a bit on the weaker end of the scale for others. You got airborne assaults, Fallschirmjäger, Valiant Assault, and of course you got Ostman call-ins, infiltration tactics, thorough salvage, Jaegers. I mean, there's a lot more going on, but also in a sense there's a lot more call-ins, in particular for the Wehrmacht, obviously, and that's due to the call-in meta, and I'll probably be doing a video on that soon. But I mean, when you look at it there, I mean, there's just not a lot there, when it does tend to be, a bit on the sort of side, like, I mean, the artillery field officer, he's nothing like the Sturmofficer, and the Sturmofficer probably rate as being better than him, but he barely sees any use, which of course is more an issue with, I think, officer like units. But there's a lot there which tends to be a bit on the mess side. Again, it tends to be like Tigers, Pumas, and the Stugis, and obviously the Stugi itself probably needs a nerf, to be fair. But again, I can sort of see, where again there's just too much here that's repeated, but also just in terms of just what the abilities can do when they are there, they don't really compare to any of the new ones. So in that sense, they just look really old and outdated, which is what they are. I mean, that's basically all the cheats Q when things were under pressure, and then sort of get later on with the new armies, a lot fresher ideas, and certainly there were a bit there again by the end, but still, it's nothing comparable, sort of really, to what the others get. So obviously, I can see that there's a reason why some people might go, That's not really that cool, and that's not really that impressive. And obviously, the question is, what can you do? I mean, if they were to focus on it, what would these sort of obvious solutions be? Which again would require some work there in terms of resources. Obviously, I mean, one option would probably, sort of from my perspective, is just begin hauling in stuff from the Ural armies, repurposing it in some ways. I mean, for example, for the Soviets, I mean, they got tanks from the British, they got the Churchill, they actually got the Valentine. You could also give them the M10, which is actually they also received by Lend-Lease, for example. So that's already 3 vehicles they can sort of use to sort of switch up the Sir Doctrines a bit. But also ability-wise, I'm sure you can figure out something like, for example, a variant of mortar cover for the Soviets. Could be, quite handy. Or just sort of a mass artillery barrage ability as well, for example. That could be snuck in there somewhere. Or some older Shermans. So obviously, let's keep the Shermans non-calling from now on. Preferably, they could get 50 caliber machine guns as opposed to, I don't know, slight access to bazookas. I mean, they did receive 1,000 of them, so in theory, you could sneak them in there if you want to sort of be, a bit brash about it. So, I mean, that's the situation. I mean, you could sneak some elements in there, so, just spice up some of the certain commanders, differentiate them, a bit more. So they aren't, quite as bloody similar, but also, could probably do something about the Guards Riflemen, for example, not just so they're not all the same, maybe some more anti-tank focused. They could then, for example, be bazookas. Some could be, more anti-infantry with Thompsons or just more PPHs, and some could more heavy with just light machine guns sort of starting out. That way, diversifying the Guardsmen a bit more towards different elements, for example. And also making the Doctrines, stand out a bit more. Similarly with some of the more conscript-heavy ones, they could so, maybe have one that, allows you to get better conscripts, frontal Vics. I mean, they had those in the campaign. That could be, one way of sort of, spicing things up there as well. And again, some others, just get a bit, arm of different call-ins. So, it's, again, not all the same. Maybe anti-infantry tactics, instead of just having another bleeding KV-8, could get a Churchill tank. That's an example. And again, conscript support tactics. Maybe again we switch out something there for, say, something like a Valentine tank, or maybe some other kind of upgrade. Maybe again, instead of some PPH upgrades, it could be Thompsons, DP light machines. Just something there to sort of, create a bit of variation between them. And again, M10s could also be easily snug in there a bit. As for the Wehrmacht, I mean, again, I'd at least think, a bit of combined arms like abilities could be snug in there, here and there. For example, maybe some kind of just infantry variant instead of just all that tactical movement. Panzertischen. I mean, you got the Fertigungswaffen there from the Sturmtiger. You could replace that with some tanks, maybe have an auto fire but an expensive upgrade. Oh, hey, again, we're suddenly diversifying. Instead of maybe have a fortified army, it's an elephant, maybe it's a Jagdpanzer forward calls in. And instead of the command tank, it could, replace your regular Panzer IV with, the Panzer IV Model J, a bit more heavy armored, slightly different veterancy again. Oh, hey, stuff's happening again. Suddenly we're diversifying and making them stand out a bit bloody more to each other. And again, maybe instead of all the Tigers, I mean, at least for elite troops, they could sneak in the King Tiger instead of the Tiger Ace. Again, we're sort of getting a bit there. Making the different doctrines stand out, just a bit more. Maybe a Jaeger variation here instead of just, Jaeger infantry upgrades, maybe leave that to someone else. And again, maybe something else instead of ambush, camouflage. I mean, there's a lot of options there. And instead of tactical move, maybe some kind of infantry blitz, that gives a bit of combat bonus. A bit like Inspired Assault there. And, maybe instead of a Stuka bombing strike here for Luftwaffe supply doctrine, maybe an airborne assault with Fallschirmjäger. I mean, there are options. There are options. Again, instead of maybe, a howitzer for some doctrines, maybe a Stuka zu Fuß or... Well, there's not really so much else there unless they decide to somehow sneak in the Hummel from Company as one, which in theory they could do, but again, that would probably require a bit more resources. And for this one, obviously, pop down together some of the abilities there, and then sort of sneak in some new elements. Maybe, an ability for the Grenadiers to lay down sandbags and S-mines. Maybe. There's stuff here that can be done, but again, they, need to get around to doing it. And again, Jagdpanzers, they could also sneak in, there's not really so much else than the Jagdpanzer that would be really, really worth it, maybe. I mean, they could perhaps have a Lux call in, but I think that might be a bit much for the Wehrmacht. King Tiger for Doctrine obviously could definitely make its way in. But beyond that, it's not really so much else there when you think about it. I mean, maybe some Obersoldaten as a call-in. I suppose, I mean, that could work. That would certainly give them the Wehrmacht, another elite infantry call-in. But beyond that, it's a bit limited, I think, because, make up for the Wehrmacht in that sense, because, grab over from the Oberkommando West. I mean, they'd rather have to, dig deeper, into companies want to sort of sneak up some things that, I mean, Knights Cross holders in theory, that have quite a new voice work, but, maybe the Hummel, maybe. Or they could just at least, maybe do something about the 250 half-track, make it a proper half-track. Throw on the light machine gun at the very least, so it's a bit more worth its price. So, in that regard, again, while I can see, why they might think it, I still don't think it's a huge balance issue. Obviously, it's a bit of an issue in other senses, but it's not like the biggest issue there that's holding back the Wehrmacht. And I'll probably get to that in my next video, which will be another 2 days' time. We still got 12 more videos to do as well, though. Feel free to check them out. So I think that sort of rather covers my thoughts here. Again, I do think there's a lot of work that can be done here, and it'd be great if Riddick were to do it. And again, what I suggest here might be sort of the more cost efficient. Again, the problem is basically, again, while they're doing the patches, they're also doing Dawn of War 3, which tends to draw away a lot of people, so they're a bit limited what they can do here. So again, it has to be some of the smarter, cheaper options here, which of course isn't quite so impressive, but still might get us some mileage out of things. But again, that's sort of how I view it. Again, not the biggest, but obviously there's plenty of work that could be done. But obviously, I'd rather see to actual balance issues being fixed first. And I'll get moving on to the next one here in 2 days' time. So look forward to that. Again, I hope you like this video. If you did, like, subscribe, and all that. This is Imperial Dane signing off, and see you all in another 2 days' time. Cheers!